The newer devices have a lot of safety capabilities and better technology built in. If you're looking at a predicate that's been on the market for 10 years, that's a lot of experience. I think the concern is going to be on the side of the industry, where they're going to say, well, all these products that are currently on the market got to the market by comparing themselves to older devices. It might have been easier. Now it's going to be harder for us. There's going to be some concern that it could be raising the standards for approval, making it a little harder. I don't see it that way, because if you're bringing a new technology to the marketplace and you compare yourself to a technology that has more capabilities, you're going to come to market with a better label, and it's going to make you more competitive. And sometimes it's harder to bridge to those old predicates than it would be to bridge to a new predicate that more closely approximates what your device is doing. You know, we have, for example, X-ray equipment coming to market that has a lot of new capabilities, but they're still comparing themselves to an X-ray machine that was on the market in 1980 that emitted a lot more radiation.
Let's talk a little bit about drug prices, because that's been a huge focus for the president. It's been a huge focus for you, too. Pfizer just came out and basically said it's going to go back to raising prices in 2019. That's Ian Reid kind of signaled that in the latest conference call that he held. We saw drug prices kind of hold steady, Pfizer in particular, saying that they would not raise drug prices while they were kind of negotiating with the administration and with the president about what to do going forward. What do you think happens? Is this something that can be addressed? Is it going to be a problem?
Well, if you look at what's actually happening in the marketplace across the board, the overall rate of inflation in the drug sector, the branded drug sector, has been largely flat. So drug prices overall have flattened out. Obviously, some individual companies are taking price increases on selected products, but a lot of the generic competition that's coming into the market is really depressing the overall inflation. Now, prices haven't come down. You haven't seen price cuts, but you haven't seen the kind of 5% and 6% inflation overall across the market that we were seeing year over year.
Last week, the Wall Street Journal had an op-ed that actually directly tied that to things that you've been doing at the FDA, just in terms of allowing new competition, making it easier for new competition to come in, particularly in orphan drug markets. They said you've saved billions of dollars by doing that.
Well, we've increased the rate of generic entry into the marketplace. So the Wall Street Journal commented on a study that was done by the Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett's team at the White House. I think it was they estimated that we've increased the number of generic approvals on a monthly basis by 18% over the 20 months that we've been working at this, saving about $26 billion. So the pace of generic approvals has gone up, and that has had some impact on the overall spending on drugs.
I had two questions. One, relating back to Pfizer. Clearly, Ian Reid had been given a talking to by the president about freezing prices through the end of this year. How much do you think that actually had an impact on the freeze and the decision to then raise them afterwards? And
yeah, I'm just not privy to those discussions, so I don't know what.
And do you think it had anything to do with the midterms?
I haven't been involved in those discussions, so I don't know what Ian Reid's calculating.
And then the other question I was going to ask is, the other report that happened in the Wall Street Journal last week was this report of a tie-up in terms of equity stakes between Walgreens and Humana, and how you think about transactions like that.
Well, I think when you look at what's happening with the vertical integration in the marketplace, the whole idea of the PBM as the middleman is changing, and the rebates that get paid to the PBM, and the PBM then passes on to the health plan. Now the PBM is going to be owned by the health plan, so that whole rebating scheme is going to look a lot different, because you're effectively going to be rebating to yourself. You know, my experience in healthcare generally is vertical integration hasn't worked out well for a lot of different sectors in healthcare. We'll see if it works out better for these guys.
Will it work out for the customer, though?
Remains to be seen. I think some of the consolidation we've seen in the marketplace, sometimes it provides new opportunities to customers, but a lot of times it creates fewer choices and less competition. All healthcare is local, remember. So if you get rid of local competition in healthcare, you could drive up local prices a lot.
But so when you read a headline like that, you go, ugh, I wish they weren't doing that, or you go, oh, this is the way, this is what we need to happen?
Hard for me to judge how that's going to affect what I'm focused on. Some of the consolidation I've seen within the sectors that I work in, I think has had some adverse effect. If you look at, for example, some of the consolidation in drug manufacturing, which I think contributes to some of the problems we see with drug shortages.
Interesting.
Scott, watching what you've done with the agency, but also kind of watching your Twitter feed and some of your own pet projects, things that you kind of focus on and try to shed light on. Over the weekend, you tweeted a strain that was the mother of a child with cancer, talking about how her child had been exposed to measles by simply going to a grocery shopping or something. And her message was one, kind of a plea for parents to vaccinate their children. What happens when you don't? How important is it for vaccination? How much of a pet project is this for you?
Well, it's not a pet project. I mean, this is a public health mandate for the agency and for the CDC and the government more generally. And vaccination rates have actually come down. If you look at what's happening right now, vaccination rates around the flu vaccine for kids is actually coming down a little bit. If we're looking at the current data, and this is a real problem. I think people becoming fearful of vaccinating children based on information that I don't think is accurate. If you look at some of the data around childhood vaccinations, these are some of the most carefully studied products on the market. And the purported link in particular between the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, and rubella, and pertussis and some of the other childhood vaccines and allegations that they could potentially cause autism, that's been one of the most carefully studied questions in scientific history, modern history, and I think it's been thoroughly debunked. I mean, we very carefully studied that question, so people should have confidence in these products. That doesn't mean they're risk-free. There are risks associated with any product, but the risks are exceedingly low, and the risk-benefit for vaccination weighs heavily in the direction of vaccinating your children.
Measles outbreak, I know it's in New Jersey and other places. Is there rising incidences of measles outbreak?
And it's tragic because first of all, it's a terrible childhood disease. Highly contagious, one of the most contagious infectious diseases, and it was largely vanquished. And now we're seeing a resurgence of it. And if you don't vaccinate a certain rate of children within a community, you create the situation with which that could spread, where you can have local epidemics. And that's in fact what we're seeing happening in certain communities. And a lot of times it's communities where people know better and they have access to good health care and they're making a conscious decision not to vaccinate.
What can the FDA do about that?
Well, I think we can continue to talk about what we do, which is look at the safety of these products and try to reassure the public. When there were questions around the MMWR vaccine, even though the science was shaky, we invested tens of millions of dollars in studying that question with some of the largest studies ever conducted, both retrospective epidemiological studies and prospective studies, to thoroughly debunk that question. I think that was an important exercise to give people confidence, but we did that. We have that information, and people still aren't acting on it. They're still not thoroughly reassured. I think because a lot of folks are too cavalier in propagating these sort of conspiracy types of theories that these vaccines are associated with risks that they're not.